Spring in a commercial orchard is an incredible sight. Almost overnight, bare branches erupt into millions of delicate blossoms, signaling the start of a promising growing season. To get to this point, growers invest heavily. They install advanced precision irrigation systems, apply tailored fertilizers to build soil health, and meticulously prune every single row to keep the trees in peak physical condition. But in many orchards, weeks after those petals drop, the branches stay completely bare. Despite the water, the nutrients, and the perfect weather, the fruit simply never develops. Other times, the trees do produce a harvest, but the results look like this. You get lumpy, misshapen, lopsided fruit that has zero commercial value on the market. You can micromanage the water, the soil, and the canopy all you want. None of that physical control matters if you miss the invisible biological trigger that actually turns a flower into a piece of fruit: successful pollination. When planning a modern orchard, the standard approach is often to plant miles of the exact same, highly profitable tree variety. It makes harvesting and pruning highly efficient. The problem with that efficiency is a biological trait called self-incompatibility. Many major fruit crops, like apples, pears, and almonds, cannot use their own pollen to fertilize their own flowers. They require pollen from a completely different, genetically distinct variety of the same fruit. If we look at a massive block of a single variety, bees might buzz between identical flowers, but fertilization is biologically blocked. To fix this, orchards interplant compatible pollinator trees. When a bee delivers this distinct pollen, it triggers fruit growth. There is a very strict timing constraint to this layout. These different tree varieties are entirely useless to each other unless they open their flowers during the exact same week. If their bloom windows do not perfectly synchronize, no cross-pollination happens. A truly productive orchard is designed strictly around the biological rules of tree genetics and timing, rather than human convenience. Even with a perfectly planned layout of compatible trees, the entire system relies on a massive, active workforce of insects to physically carry that pollen from point A to point B. An orchard in full bloom provides endless nectar for these insects, but that bloom only lasts a few weeks. For the rest of the year, a perfectly manicured, weed-free orchard floor offers absolutely zero food. When the blossoms fade, native bees, bumblebees, and other wild pollinators face an immediate crisis. They either starve or they abandon the territory completely to find resources elsewhere. To keep that biological workforce permanently on site, modern growers use ecosystem management. By planting continuous cover crops and strips of native flowers between the tree rows, they provide overlapping food sources before and after the fruit trees bloom. Managing an orchard like a pristine, sterile factory floor actively suppresses your yield. To keep the pollinators you need, the farm has to be cultivated as a continuous, thriving, living habitat. All of this preparation comes down to an incredibly tight time frame. Farmers generally have just a few days to a few weeks each spring, where the open flowers, the active bees, and the weather must perfectly align. A sudden cold snap or a day of heavy rain will completely ground the bee workforce, leaving the flowers unvisited. Conversely, extreme heat stress can dry up the flower's nectar and render the pollen unviable. Then there are the human-made threats to consider. A poorly timed chemical application during active blooming hours can drift into the open flowers, wiping out pollinators exactly when they are needed most. To counter all these risks, growers rely on massive logistical operations. They bring in entire truckloads of commercial beehives, flooding the orchard with millions of bees to maximize pollination during short weather windows. A grower's entire financial year, all the pruning, watering, and planning, ultimately hinges on protecting an uncontrollable biological event occurring over a matter of days. When autumn arrives, the final harvest serves as a physical, biological record of exactly what happened during that brief spring bloom. Look at those deformed apples again. That lopsided, asymmetrical growth is the direct, visible scar of incomplete pollination. The seeds on that side of the apple were never fertilized, so the surrounding fruit tissue failed to expand. On the other hand, a large, perfectly uniform piece of fruit is the physical manifestation of complete, robust seed development, triggered by an insect delivering exactly the right pollen at exactly the right time. Every single perfect apple, pear, or cherry requires immense biological choreography. The tree genetics have to match. The bloom timing has to sync, the weather has to hold, and a healthy habitat has to support the insects doing the heavy lifting. Producing a successful harvest requires deeply understanding and carefully orchestrating these invisible ecological systems, rather than trying to overpower a farm with brute force.